In the northern highlands of Ethiopia, beneath the shadows of fallen monuments, lies a story almost erased from memory. A legend of a woman powerful enough to change an empire and dangerous enough to be forgotten. Her name, in fragments of tradition, is Gudit, or Yodit, or Judith. To some, she was a tyrant who burned an ancient kingdom to the ground. To others, she was a liberator who ended a corrupt dynasty. Tonight we step into the ruins of Aksum to uncover the truth behind a queen history tried to erase. Before we meet the queen, we must understand the world she ruled. More than 1,000 years ago, Aksum was one of the great powers of the ancient world. Its coins circulated from Rome to India. Its ships crossed the Red Sea. Its kings built monuments taller than any in Europe at the time. The obelisks of Aksum, carved from single blocks of granite, rose like stone skyscrapers into the sky. The empire traded ivory, gold, frankincense, and ideas between Africa, Arabia, and the Mediterranean. Yet today, Aksum sits quietly in the background of history, its legacy overshadowed, its rulers forgotten. Except for one the queen chroniclers feared, her story survives not in official history, but in myth. In Ethiopian oral tradition, she is Gudit the queen who destroyed the Aksumite dynasty. In some accounts, she was Jewish, part of the Beta Israel community. In others, she was Aga, a leader of mountain peoples oppressed by Aksum's ruling elite. The truth is hidden beneath centuries of contradiction. We do not know her real name. We cannot confirm her origin. Even the dates of her reign are debated. But all sources, hostile or sympathetic, agree on one thing: she won power in a world designed to deny it to her. Written chronicles of Ethiopia begin centuries after her reign, but even in religious manuscripts and royal records, she appears only as a shadow or curse, a disaster, a woman who brought horror. Why such silence? Because she did what no one thought possible. She overthrew a dynasty that traced its bloodline to the biblical marriage of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. For the scribes, this was more than rebellion. It was sacrilege, a direct attack on the divine origin story of Ethiopian kingship. And so her name was not preserved. Her motives were not recorded. Her legacy was reduced to ashes and fear. This is how a queen becomes a legend, not through praise but through erasure. By the 900s, Aksum was already in decline. Trade routes had shifted toward rising Muslim port cities on the Red Sea. Climate change dried fields that once fed thousands. Internal factions splintered royal power. Into this fragile world came Gudit, leading armies drawn from people who lived outside the elite circles of power. According to later traditions, she attacked Aksum's royal city, burned its churches, and executed nobles tied to the dynasty. Some say she ruled for 40 years, long enough to stabilize what she had conquered. Others say she destroyed everything. But empires rarely collapse because of one person. They fall when their foundations are already cracked. Gudit was not the cause, she was the consequence. This is where history becomes interpretation. If you read the story from the perspective of Aksum's ruling class, she is a destroyer, a queen of fire who ended a sacred order. But read it from the perspective of the Aga people or the marginalized, communities excluded from power, and she becomes something different, a revolutionary, a symbol of resistance, a woman who tore down a monarchy to build something new. Her story changes depending on who you believe and who wrote the history. Gudit's legacy reveals a global pattern. Powerful women rarely get to be remembered as leaders. Instead, they become monsters in the stories of the men they defeated. Cleopatra was called a seducer. Uzetian was called a murderer. Irene of Byzantium was called insane. Queen Zinga was called savage. Gudit belongs to the same category, a woman who took power outside the rules and was punished by memory. Perhaps she really was brutal. Or perhaps chroniclers could not accept a woman who ruled as a king. History leaves us a question instead of an answer. After Gudit, the written record falls silent. For nearly a century, we have no reliable chronicles. It is a gap known simply as the dark period of Ethiopian history. But then, a new dynasty emerges, the Zag. And here lies the most revealing clue. The Zag kings are believed to be connected to the Aga people, the same cultural roots many traditions assign to Gudit. They rebuilt authority in the highlands, patronized the church, and carved the extraordinary rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, wonder of medieval engineering. If Aksum had been reduced to ashes, how did a sophisticated new dynasty rise so quickly? Because the empire didn't die. It transformed. And the force behind that transformation may have been the queen history called a destroyer. The greatest mystery in Gudit's story is simple. What was her real name? Gudit might be an insulted, distorted form of Yodit or Judith, tied to a biblical archetype of a woman who uses violence to overthrow tyranny. Some oral traditions call her a Sato. Others avoid her name entirely, using symbolic language to describe a queen who burned the sun, a poetic way of saying she destroyed the center of power. The truth may never be known, but the silence is itself evidence. Someone wanted the memory erased, and still, the story survived, not through writing, but through whispers. Why does a story so uncertain matter today? Because Gudit's legend challenges how we understand history. It reminds us that the past is not neutral. It is shaped by those who wrote it and those who could not. She forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. What if the villain was a liberator? What if the Dark Age was a time of renewal? What if one of Africa's most powerful rulers was erased because her existence was inconvenient? Her story is a reminder that history is fragile and silence can be strategic. So who was the Forgotten Queen of Aksum? A tyrant who burned a dynasty. A hero of the oppressed, a symbol of religious struggle. A woman too powerful for her own era. Maybe she was all of these. Maybe she was none. What matters is that she lived, she ruled, and she changed the direction of Ethiopian history. Her legacy was buried but not lost, because legends survive where ink fades. The stones of Aksum are still whispering her name. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey into forgotten history, be sure to subscribe for more.